Welcome to the Quality Edge, where smarter quality strategies become your business advantage.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Nahil. Welcome back to the Quality Edge. Today we're taking on a big question. What does it take to transform quality from a cost center into a value creator? Too often, quality is seen as the department of no, the one focused on audits, compliance, and corrective action. But the truth is, when quality becomes part of a company's strategic engine, it can drive measurable outcomes, higher throughput, stronger margins, faster innovation, and deeper customer trust. Joining me today is James Wells, Senior Analyst and Research Director at LNS Research, who can help us learn how top manufacturers are making this transformation and what separates companies that really manage quality from those that use it as a competitive advantage. James, thanks very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for the conversation, Chris.
Sure thing. So before we get into the strategies for transforming quality from a cost center to a value creator, set the stage for us a little bit. I know LNS Research has spent a lot of time looking at how organizations define and measure the business impact of quality. So what was the inspiration behind this particular piece of research for transforming from cost center to value creator?
Thanks for that, Chris. So the motion from cost center to value creator has kind of grown over the years of our research and quality. So LNS has been around for almost 14 years, and we started our company by researching and advising on quality. And one of the long-standing themes that we've seen as we've repeated this quality research over successive years is the disengagement of the quality function itself in transformative activities, engagement with technology, and engaging in advanced solutions. And we talk about it in the terms of the power of prepositions. So transformation that is done with or by a function as opposed to done to a function tends to be more successful, right? So if you think about it as an outside in type of an approach, that tends to get less buy-in and support with the internal team as opposed to something that the team themselves are engaged in reimagining or remaking the work. And so we've kind of unpacked that or wanted to unpack that over successive years of research. And one of the things we've discovered over the long-term trend is that quality tends to be viewed as the policing function within an organization. And they are characterized by having goal misalignment and setting themselves up in conflict with other parts of the value chain functions, core value chain contributors such as manufacturing and product design and marketing. Quality often has contradictory goals to those functions, which leads to quality being perceived as the department of no, which I think you mentioned in the intro is the long-standing persona that quality has adopted. And that leads to quality being perceived as not a strategic partner across the value chain and being viewed as a cost center to be minimized as opposed to a profit center that contributes value to the business. And it's a well-deserved reputation that has been in the development for really over 40 years since the advent of ISO standards or the beginning of the adoption, the widespread adoption of ISO standards has led quality to this cost center policing function mentality. And so this cost center to value creator is the challenge that we see leaders adopting, but we challenge followers to adopt the mindset of how can quality contribute to growth of the business and business value as opposed to the cost avoidance of compliance.
Interesting. We'll dig into this a little bit more. So broadly, for a quality leader who does put quality at the center of their function, who's not the quality department is not the department who says no, is not the manufacturing police, as it were. What are some of the characteristics of a quality leader like that? What makes them so?
What we found, and I, by the way, my background before I joined LNS, I had nearly 30 years of industrial quality team leadership myself across several different industries. And so one of the things that we find that leaders do is they are much more collaborative with their partner functions in product design and customer service and sales and manufacturing than the compliance-focused leaders. Compliance-focused leaders tend to build walls around their function, and they kind of view themselves as they're in their fortress, protecting themselves against all the others across the value chain. And embedded quality leaders, we'll talk a little bit about embedded quality and the idea about that in a second. Embedded quality leaders partner and align their goals with partners in the value chain, and they contribute to value chain partner success. It's kind of a give or take kind of a thing. So they invest in new product development, as an example. They invest in new product development success or NPI success more than follower organizations do, which typically only engage in new product activity at the end or the qualification step.
It's like the quality's version of the shift left principle.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. One of the pieces of data out of your recent research was that of organizations that are compliance driven rather than that view quality as a strategic enabler, of those, 52% of the business cases from compliance driven companies fail to get approval from the C-suite. Yet there are very compelling reasons, very compelling business reasons for companies who take the opposite view of quality. They're seeing actual real performance gains. 29% higher throughput, 23% higher profit margins, 20% more successful product launches. There are very serious negative consequences for non-compliance too. So there's sort of an interesting gap here. What do you think is behind the gap and what's causing that sort of leadership understanding support gap here?
So if you pull up and you try to think about the mission of those in the C-suite is to allocate the resources to the best benefit of the company as a whole. So if we look at the cost associated with quality compliance schemes, it's typically various research has different numbers, but it's in the range of 3 to 5% of revenue that is allocated to quality compliance activities. Similar portion is dedicated to product development, so 3 to 5%, and also similarly to sales. But if you look at the value contribution of those same three functions, quality compliance actually is a cost avoidance game, so it really doesn't contribute any growth or revenue additional to the bottom line. But of course, we all know new products gain significant margin and market share and competitive advantage for the company, and similarly for sales. And so if you and I are in the C-suite and we have 3 to 5% of our revenue to spend, and we have two cases in front of us, one is compliance quality and the other is investing in a new product where we might gain, 25% new revenue from that new product, I think the choice we would make would be that new product.
That's the message that's going to resonate with the CEO or CFO, not the compliance cost avoidance, although important nonetheless.
You made a great point that failure to comply can be costly. So there are some reputational harms. If we look at the aerospace industry and particularly the Boeing case over the last several years, you can make an argument that the compliance cost to their reputation has been in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And so that's a real cost. But the reality is compliance is expected and it's table stakes. And we have to do it. We're never going to get away from it. We're always going to have to live with ISO standards and regulatory requirements and those sorts of things in our industry. The secret for the quality team is to figure out how to do compliance with a lightweight lift, right? So we talk about at LNS Research, we talk about the concept of costless compliance. It's mainly a value chain story where there's a data layer that's connected from the early concept design through sourcing, making, and delivery to the customer. Data all across that value stream that ties the quality story together and makes compliance a much easier thing to see. And so it's less about audits and those sorts of things and more about embedding those ideas within the processes of the value chain.
Interesting stuff. In your research too, you talk about the notion of big Q quality versus small Q quality. Can you detail that a little bit for us?
Sure. We've all heard, public statements of companies like Ford back in the 90s where they said quality is job one, and that was plastered all over their commercials and those sorts of things. And there's a lot of companies out there that view the role of quality as inspection and checking for quality characteristics throughout the manufacturing process. But certainly everybody agrees that end of the line inspection is where quality typically plays. That's little Q inspection, tactical compliance quality. And that is the thing that is most mentally associated with quality as everyone's job. And so if the quality organization scope is little Q tactical inspection quality, then they tend to ebb and flow in terms of the organization. We can talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that's the idea of that tactical shop floor inspection type of quality. Strategic quality is really about, and we talk about that as big Q, right? So big Q quality is strategic quality, and strategic quality spans the value chain from the design through the source, the make, the deliver, and the customer experience. So it really brings all the elements of the value chain together and creates a homogeneous view of quality at every step of the life cycle of the product and or service that company delivers. So that's big Q strategic quality. That's the thing that makes a difference to those KPIs that you mentioned and gets those quality leaders the credibility that they need in order to move their mission towards delivered quality.
Makes sense. We'll talk in a second about how specifically to get quality leaders to get that audience in the C-suite. We've referenced embedded quality a couple of different times here too. That sounds like the result of the big Q. Is there more to know about embedded quality?
Well, there's always more with us, right?
Tons, I'm sure.
But it really all starts with strategy. So, one of the things we found in the quality research that I did last year is that a top 3 reason for organizations to report that they failed to meet their quality goals was the lack of a strategy. And so quality strategy, we see a big difference in a couple of areas around strategies of leaders. And by the way, those leaders are in our research, leaders have a definition. They are the companies that are reporting significant results from their efforts to transform quality. And then the followers are everybody who's still experimenting. And so leaders tend to have a successful NPI, so new product introduction, as a key goal. They have predictive quality, so building predictive models for quality to really essentially guard the factory door to prevent defects and escapes that result in recalls. Intentionally influencing partner functions is a core part of leader strategies. And then I mentioned earlier that quality has a long history of misalignment. But what we're seeing in strategies of leaders is alignment with the corporation's zero goals. So like a net zero carbon, particularly zero waste, where quality has a big influence on the achievement of zero waste through scrap reduction and elimination of rework and those sorts of things. Quality can move the needle in a large way on zero waste. And so integrating with and aligning with corporate needs and goals and aligning with partner needs and goals are the key things that we see in effective quality strategies. And then initiatives that support those strategies are, sprinkled throughout the embedded quality value chain.
Who are some of the typical partners? You've referenced partners a couple of different times here. Who are within an organization? Who are the typical partners?
We talk about partners as value chain partners. So product development is typically, whether that's an engineering function, R&D function, whatever it's titled or called within an organization. That's the organization that's responsible for designing new products and processes. And certainly quality has a role to play in the effective, successful launch of a new product. Quality typically gets involved in that new product development process very late in the game, where they're essentially doing requirements review and participating in qualification. one of the things that we see quality leaders doing to engage earlier in product development is bringing digital voice to the customer as early as concept development phases in order to be able to inform the development team of the customer's preferences and likes and dislikes and what features and functions the new product should enhance, or what features and functions they don't like and should be eliminated or reduced in some way. So calibrating the design team on the voice of the customer is a key role that quality leaders do to move earlier into the development process, as an example.
Interesting stuff. And that really sort of brings out the whole notion of sort of, circular development, right? The whole, virtuous cycle from start to finish. That's really interesting stuff. So technology obviously plays a role here, right? Not just in automating the processes, but in sort of visibility, data sharing, shared ownership. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you talk about the data layer and stuff like that, and how sharing this information might actually play out in the real world?
A key story that I like to tell. We heard a lot about this at our. We had a transformation event last month in October. Sorry, I thought it was still November.
Time flies.
Time flies. We had this event late October in Chicago, and we heard some great stories from consumer products companies about how they had built a digital voice of the customer initiative. So it's based on scraping customer sentiment. It's available on social media and other platforms such as complaints and call centers and a variety of different data inputs, comparing that with production data. So that's building the data layer of customer sentiment back to how we made the product and what were the quality requirements and specifications met during that. And then using that to improve product, improve process of existing product that's in manufacturing, but also informing themes about how to design better products. And then the other interesting thing that we heard in these stories was doing that same motion for competitor products. And so establishing some competitive benchmarking of how your competitor's product performs in the market, how your customers view their products compared to yours, where are they winning versus where are you winning, so that you can inform the design team about how to beat competition or how to design better products that beat competition. And we heard some compelling stories about those kinds of motions at our event in October.
That's neat. Let's go back to the business case. You're a quality leader who is attempting to perform an embedded quality transformation in your organization. You're trying to get the ear of the C-suite. What's some advice you could give somebody who's walking into a budget meeting, say, or walking into a meeting with the CFO about getting their initiative funded? What should they be thinking about? What sort of data should they bring? What sort of words, what elements of the language of business should they know?
I would say, first off, don't expect any epiphanies in that first meeting. If you're coming from a place where quality is viewed as the compliance police, don't expect any overnight transformations. But the reality is that quality leaders own that personification of quality is a well-earned reputation, right? And so it's up to the quality leader and their team to break that stigma and break that stereotype. And there's, as I said, compliance is a table stake. We expect it and we always have to do it, but we can't stop there. But because we own this persona of compliance police, we have to break out of that through some trust building activity and some credibility earning activity. And there's really three layers where the quality leader and their support team have to build trust and credibility. And that's with the C-suite. And the motion there is to learn to speak the language of business, which is dollars and cents and business KPIs, right? So if we talk about audit compliance and cycle time to close a CAPA and repeat CAPAs and complaints and those sorts of things, we lose the room, right? But if we talk about scrap reduction, if we talk about throughput improvement, if we talk about margin improvement, if we talk about defect reduction, that's dollars and people understand that and they pay attention, right? So that's the credibility building at the C-suite level. At the value chain partner, it's that thing I already mentioned about investing in partner success. So, you got to give to get. So most quality leaders make this mistake where they drive a culture of compliance and call it a culture of quality. And so what that means is they expect their value chain partners to do things the way quality says they should be done, which is sort of like pushing a rope. It's a losing proposition. So you have to invest time and effort in order to get time and effort. And that's the value chain move. And then you have to gain trust in the plant network as well. And that's even a different motion there where you have to be in service and support mode in order to make the job of the everyday operator or quality technician or plant manager or line tech, whatever the role is, easier and better to do. There's a lot of credibility building and trust building that needs to happen. And that master business case is the vision for where that leader wants to take the quality organization over the long term. Once that leader has built the trust and the credibility in the C-suite that they're a strategic business partner, then they have the right to be heard at the C-suite level. Once that business case is in place and endorsed and supported, then that budget meeting gets easier.
Sure.
But clearly it's a long process. Right?
I was going to say, but not in the first meeting.
Not in the first meeting.
It's going to take a bit. Interesting stuff. Yeah. So it's a reorientation of how quality is approached, thought of, and it takes some work to get the approval nod from the folks in the C-suite. Interesting stuff. But again, if the companies who do this, these are the companies that are going to win. They're the ones who look at quality as a force multiplier. They'll see the results of margin and growth and better customer relationships, stronger trust, better post-market response from customers and what have you. So is that the biggest opportunity going forward in the next few years?
So we do research on industrial productivity here at LNS Research. One of the things we see in the 100 most productive companies in the world, we call them the world's most productive companies, a large portion of them have messaging and details to support that they really do this around delivered quality. So the focus on delivering value and, consistent quality that the customer expects and demands for the price of the product that is provided is a differentiator. So I mentioned earlier that we saw in the research last year that it's a top 3 driver of competitive advantage in the world's most productive companies. And so that's the opportunity, is to how to align those business cases, those supporting business cases leading to the master business case end state with the incremental improvement of delivered quality for the customer. As a result of improving delivered quality for the customer, opportunities for margin gains increase, revenue gains increase, loyalty, which I've written about recently, increases, which has a net positive effect on additional purchases and recommendations for new revenue and those sorts. So it's a rising tide that raises all ships.
Great stuff. This topic raises a bunch of other different topics, right? From voice of the customer to the future of industrial work to all that sort of stuff too. So it'd be great to have yourself back, or you or some of your colleagues come back and talk about some of those topics later this season. So otherwise, James, this has been a really fantastic conversation, tremendously interesting. I hope it's been helpful to the audience. I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for coming by today.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to next time. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a bunch. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of The Quality Edge. I want to once again thank our guest, James Wells. I think the message is clear. Quality isn't just about reducing risk, it's about driving results. To make that leap from cost center to value creator, leaders have to build a clear strategy, tie it to business outcomes, and own the narrative at the executive level. Of course, if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, rate, and share The Quality Edge wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, I'm Chris Nahil, reminding you to lead with quality and transform your business.